just super excited to be here and give this brief lightning talk because the title here has the future of responsible AI frameworks. I'm going to take you a little bit into the future in that I'm going to give you a preview of a paper that our team is presenting later this week in Madrid at the AI Ethics and Society conference that's happening. So you'll just get a little bit of a preview of this paper in our 10 minutes or so together. The paper is called 10 Insights Across Other Domains That Inform Responsible AI Frameworks. And it was written by a team, myself, who has experience in business journalism, innovation journalism, as well as having served on our responsible innovation team doing our AI launch reviews in the past, as well as HCI researchers, UX research experts, people with backgrounds in trust and safety, content safety, human rights. And I want to give a big shout out to one of the primary authors of the paper who's here, Dunstan, Alison Hope, who's also a collaborator with PAI, and also experts in security. And in this paper, we wanted to look at sort of a counterintuitive way of looking at the future of responsible AI frameworks. I'm going to keep going back to frameworks because who doesn't love frameworks? There are a lot of them out there. And how we can use, counterintuitively, some frameworks that already exist to help shape the future. I'm just going to give you a little bit of a background of how we approach this. We really just used the repetition test, sort of talking across our different domains in conversations and looking for patterns that we were seeing over and over. It's an approach that's similar to saturation in qualitative research. So that's the approach that we took for this paper. And I will say, too, I don't have any slides, and I just found out the paper is online today. So I will share that out after this conversation. So I'm going to actually, we went forward into the future a little bit, but now we're going to go back a little bit into the past, which seems a little bit counterintuitive because when we talk about responsible AI, we get really excited. We're seeing all of these models with advanced capabilities that even a year ago, really seemed like science fiction. We see these astonishing waves of innovation, technical accomplishment, speed of its development into products that billions of people are using every single day around the world. And so our first instinct might be, let's make new frameworks for all of these new technologies and applications to match the innovation. But we think a really practical way of approaching this, approaching developing new responsible AI frameworks, because some of you might be doing that. You might be in specific sectors like healthcare or banking, and sometimes we hear this from customers, like should there be a tailored set of frameworks for these industries? Some of those conversations might have come up on the whiteboards around the room. At the same time, some of us in this room are fine-tuning the responsible AI frameworks that we've already written together or that we've written with our teams. So, approaching that future, perhaps it's not about inventing new frameworks, but it's more applying frameworks that already exist. Frameworks that have already been built around a lot of consensus, international consensus, that can actually help us move quickly because maybe some of the concepts have already been translated in hundreds of languages, because they have been proven across borders, because they might be interoperable already across what we know as a fragmented regulatory landscape, and that came up in some of the earlier conversations before. So in this paper, we're going to go back a little bit into the past in terms of approaching the future. And we're not going to go through all 10 of those insights, but focus on two rock-solid foundations in this research in terms of domains to borrow from. And one of them is international human rights, okay? So for years, many of us in this room have been trying to list and address all of the new, quote-unquote, new AI risks in safety, in privacy, in security. But are these really new problems? Are these specific to AI? Or are they really threats to many of the fundamental rights that we all have as human beings? The right to live, the right to health, the right to bodily security. So you start to see that many of the risks and threats that we're starting to identify with even some of our newest safety frameworks are really fundamental and are reflected in these frameworks that have been around for years, have been translated, have been the result of much international consensus. Human rights, they're the most robust, globally accepted, and durable risk taxonomy, really, that we have in the world right now. And I know this is an interesting time to talk about it because cultures change, politics change, but human needs stay the same. They stay the same if there is a model upgrade. They stay the same if there's a product launch. Those rights stay the same. And they can give us a stable compass no matter how fast the technology shifts. So the second foundation in this paper, and again, this is a paper meant to be thought-provoking and meant to help people as they fine-tune future responsible AI frameworks. Going back into the past again, there's another set of established frameworks around responsible business conduct. We've been all thinking really hard about innovating and inventing new AI risk assessments. Many of us in the room, I even see past colleagues where we've done this even in the last 5 years or so, because we already have decades of experience in frameworks like the UN's guiding principles on business and human rights, the OECD's principles as well. I know it's an interesting time to talk about these in the current culture and political environment, but again, the sort of fundamental ideas of responsibility, the due diligence around business conduct remains the same. What's interesting too now, there's a timely reason why focusing on that framework might be particularly helpful for those of you in this room, just because these frameworks can give a common vocabulary in terms of understanding risk in early conversations. So for example, imagine you work for big tech that is developing these very advanced AI models that are available via API. And you're having a conversation with the hospital. We were talking about healthcare workers using AI tools, or a bank or a nonprofit who are trying to shape their own responsible AI frameworks or understand how AI risk could be handled in their specific sector. So for example, the UN principles, they could unite both sides in these conversations with a common vocabulary. They could allow both to assess risk with known frameworks and common sense ways to talk about risk. Really specifically in the UN's framework, by its scope, by the scope of the risk, how many people could be affected, the scale of the risk, how severe is the harm, and its remediability. Can we fix this risk? So this common ground, this language, if you really think of it that way, could be a great starting point for updating those specialized frameworks in different sectors, many of the ones we talked about with the Post-its earlier. So we're not going to go into the other 8 insights borrowed from other domains, but I wanted to give a little bit of a sort of extra bit of information that's not in the paper, but focus on a couple of domains that are included in the paper, and what we have done at Google by borrowing from other domains. So one domain that we did talk about is in the paper is the trust and safety practice. And as many of you might know, in recent years, our responsible innovation, sort of AI principles reviews, have been scaled up because we've learned from our trust and safety colleagues. Years and years of online abuse fighting coming out of our trust and safety practice, hundreds of experts in content safety that is all very, very relevant knowledge and experience in the era of generative AI and the era of agents. So trying to understand where those gaps are in terms of frameworks in other domains, in this case, trust and safety. It might not be AI specific, but now it is. And then another area that we have borrowed from, of course, is the security domain internally as well. So, of course, we are applying security in our responsible AI frameworks, but adapting some of the frameworks from the security world as well. So, for example, constant risk assessment, not only launch assessment, but assessments of risks happening pre-launch, post-launch, constant monitoring and mitigation. And then also specifically from the security domain, our red teaming practices. Of course, we're still doing security red teaming, but we've been adapting that framework into other areas. So content red teaming, adversarially testing for content outputs with generated content, for example. And also scaling up that framework of red teaming to external red teaming, extending that out to trusted testers, participating in industry events like DEF CON. And then finally, automating red teaming, taking the technology that we're building ourselves and helping to automate that stress testing and adversarial testing of content risks and security risks as well. So, I hope these are helpful to this room, because one reason we wanted to present this in a very high level way before presenting it in a more academic setting at AIES later this week was because PAI is the rare place where you get so many voices at the table: civil society, academia, governments, big tech, startups, healthcare, nonprofits. You're all in the room here. And so we really felt that starting with some of these very known frameworks that already exist would be helpful to all of you to come to the table and be able to use that as a common vocabulary. We were having some conversations over lunch when we were talking about the topic of this chat, and somebody was like, do we need more frameworks? I said, actually, we don't, but we do need to evolve them over time, and we can improve them and fine-tune them, and this can be, some of these existing frameworks can be helpful tools that you can deploy immediately. So really, the real challenge isn't inventing any new frameworks, building upon them. We don't need to invent anything new as we keep up with the product launches themselves. Our real challenge is just staying disciplined, right? Taking these powerful frameworks that we already have and applying them day to day, consistently, really thoughtfully, transparently, and together. So there's a lot for us to do. I hope that this perspective is helpful, and I really hope that you go deeper and read the paper that we previewed in this brief talk. So, thank you.
Hi, we have a little time for Q&A, so does anyone have questions for Reena?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. It's, let me make sure I get it right. It's 10 insights from other domains that inform responsible AI frameworks. That's right, Dunstan, right? Okay. Yeah, and it's available, I think, on the via ACM. Yeah, it's live now.